Today on UVA Legends podcast, I have Nadja Bellan-White, a global brand leader who just became CEO. Actually, in January, it becomes official of SS+K. Nadja, great to see you. Congratulations.
Hi, Julian. How are you? It's good to see you as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to give people your bio because it's pretty amazing. I know you're from New York. I forgot which borough you're
I'm
from.
from Queens. Yeah, representing
From
Queens.
Queens.
Yeah.
So you came down with some Queens attitude to UVA. You were class
I
of
did
89.
class of 89, a little bit of a Queens attitude. I think Richie saved me from myself a couple of times.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we did what we could. You're a double foreign affairs Spanish
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
You got your MBA from NYU.
Yeah.
Then you've had this amazing career in advertising and marketing. I get the two confused. I think advertising is part of marketing, but you've done a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You were at Digitize. You were VP of marketing between 99 and 2005.
Yeah.
You were SVP at Urban Concepts between
Yeah.
06 and 07.
Yeah.
You were SVP of Publicis Modem between 2007, 2011. Now you were at Ogilvy and Mather for a long time. You did a lot of very interesting things that I'm looking forward to talking to, including working in Africa and in London,
Yeah.
and doing lots of different things. And you've worked with all kinds of special brands, Unilever, Coca-Cola, LG, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, IKEA. Some of these might have been at your other stops, but just a who's who in American brands. And then you've been at Vice Media. So I guess that's internal. So now you're working on the inside of a company.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the last, last 3 years.
Yeah.
You're global chief marketing officer or chief marketing officer. And that's before the recent announcement. Did I get most of that correct, Nadja?
That is absolutely, that's pretty good. Yeah, I've been, when I used to come in and out of the country for 7 years, they kept thinking I was running from the law because I moved so much. You should see, I had to get like 2 and 3 passport books because, when I decided to leave the US in 2014, I've really never been afraid of challenges or opportunities. Some people are like, why would you leave the comfort of New York City? You're doing really well in your business. And that was because one of my mentors, Shelley Lazarus, said, sweetie, you've kind of hit a wall here. Not in a negative way. It's just that there's really nothing else for us to teach you at this point. If you really want to manage your own P&L, if you really want to become a CEO, you're going to have to get different types of experience. And given that my major was in foreign affairs, now I would have, with a focus on Africa and the Middle East, if you would have told me I actually would have gone to Africa back in the 80s in college, I wouldn't have believed it. But strangely enough, I ended up being CEO of Africa in 2014, and go figure, that was my major in college with a focus on Africa and the Middle East. And kind of got the bug for really transforming brands, right, with digital and data at the core, which is kind of incredible. I'd spent some early time of my career at IBM doing marketing strategy, helping them go direct using something called the internet, believe it or not. Yeah, there was a time people questioned the efficacy of the internet, believe it or not. People were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I kind of think this is going to be a thing. Kind of think it's going to be a big thing. But I've never been afraid of taking calculated risks, be it winning one of the pioneers of digital, working at Digitize with David Kenny, be it going over to Africa to become CEO, overseeing 26 different countries, all very different, or even deciding when to call it in Africa and take an opportunity to go to London and really lead the client services team across EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I've never been afraid. And then coming back here to Vice, where people are like, why would you do that? That's such a tough brand. But I'm not the kind of person to be scared from tough assignments. But now I've got a new assignment as CEO of SS+K/M&C Saatchi, and they're the team of the Obamas. They did Yes We Can. They have done work within the Biden administration. They do big brand work for countries like Iceland. They do big strategic communications work for JP Morgan Chase. So I seem to love my brand spirit wherever I go.
Yeah. Well, as a CEO, do you get to be less creative in terms of developing these brands? One thing in your profile, you're known to help challenging brands. They come to you with with when a brand is
I
struggling
think
at
so.
times. So do you lose that ability to do that as a CEO because you're more business and more of in a planning role and all the other things the CEO has to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a CEO, you're never too far away from key assignments, right? I mean, you become the beacon of the transformation. A lot of times the relationships are tied to you as one of the senior members of the team. I don't have to be as much hands-on, but you very much need to have knowledge about how to transform brands. So most recently, SS&K, won awards for the work they did with the country of Iceland, trying to attract, tourists to Iceland. I love that kind of work. I've also worked with Mexico City and the country of Gabon, three very different places, but all needed branding. So for me, I get to draw on the same skill set.
Yeah, and also as a CEO of a company, and also I guess as maybe in your work advice, you're doing branding of your own business as well. So it's twofold. You're providing branding to your clients, which they pay you guys a lot of money for, but you also have an eye towards your own brand. Is that also part of the fun? Is creating your own brand
Yeah, it
of your
is.
company?
I mean, I look for SS&K, they have three solid founders that founded this company 30 years ago. They've never had a CEO before.
Hmm.
And, I think for them, they said they looked really long and hard for a leader that not only could do the work, because that's one thing, but you have to share the same values. And I share the same values as Rob, Lenny, and Mark. I mean, the first conversation we had was, what are the values you hold true? Who are you as a person? And one of the things I've learned in my career is that you have to always lead with dignity and grace. And I think oftentimes the mistake people make is not doing that. So you lead with dignity and grace, you exit with dignity and grace, you govern with dignity and grace. And that's something that I've tried to maintain throughout my career.
Yeah. And are you looking forward to being kind of back on the outside and helping, supporting clients rather than internal?
Oh,
As you know, I'm
yeah.
an attorney, and a lot of times, a lot of us go in house and we work and we solve the legal problems of the company instead of working with our companies from a law firm. Is it similar to what your status is?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really look forward to being, not being a CMO was lovely, but at the end of the day, I'm really good at advising. That's really kind of my wheelhouse, being able to advise clients, not necessarily be in the weeds, as much as I have been over the last 30 years. So for me, this is much more linked to my personality and skill set now.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned traveling a lot for
Yeah.
jobs, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are limited. I could never leave the DC area, and so in my career,
Come on, you got to get out.
I
I mean,
know I couldn't leave
places
my
you
mother.
go to.
She's nearby. It's one of those things where I think that's a career limiter for a lot of people. It's also you have a couple of kids, you have a family that
Yeah.
can also be challenging to try to move when you have another career in the household as well, and you got kids that may have their sports that might not be as well supported in some countries as other. So, your ability to travel had to be a key to your success because some people just don't want to do that.
Yeah, look, it is tough, right? And my kids adjusted quite well. My ex-husband stayed in Nairobi. He loved it so much he never wanted to leave.
Hmm.
I said, well, I'm not leaving. I'm calling it. I'm going to London. He's like, I'm going to stay in Kenya. I said, okay, well, that's awesome. And it worked out for us because he actually has a complete life in Kenya. But you got to understand, my children now have been educated in the US, Kenya, and in London. That's kind of rare. And for people that are afraid to come out of their comfort zone, I had one person say to me recently, aren't you afraid living in London? I said, aren't you afraid living in Richmond? Which I actually feel safer where I am. I should be a little worried about you. And this is during the height of the Trump administration. They were like, aren't you scared? I'm like, I actually feel great. However, I'm a little worried about what's happening in the US based on what I see on politics. Same thing when Ebola hit when I left to go to Africa. And can you imagine, Julian? I moved in the middle of Ebola.
Wow.
And when I got there, everyone's like, oh no, my pastor said, oh my gosh, you're going to be okay. I was fine. Because guess what? You want to know what geography is? Liberia, from where I was in Nairobi, was like an 8-hour flight. Nowhere close.
Yeah.
But again, you have to get out of your comfort zone to realize that the US is not the center of the world.
Yeah.
Despite the fact many think we are.
Yeah. Well, the challenges of women in business are well documented in terms of being CEO, the challenges of African-American women. There's not, millions of CEOs, even though they've done better than African-American males, probably in CEOs. What about in Africa? Were you a rare person to be a woman and a Black woman CEO in Nigeria, or was it common?
No, it was pretty common. But here's the thing, you have to pay attention to the cultural cues in every country that you work in, right? And the continent, working on the continent, is far more conservative than people realize.
Hmm.
And so there's certain deferences that you'd have to make to people. That was just a natural part of it. But being Caribbean, growing up Jamaican, I kind of knew what those were. So I fell into those roles fairly easily. But there are quite a number of female CEOs where I was in Nairobi. It wasn't a problem. And as I traveled across the continent, you met many, many powerful women. One of the women I worked with is a woman named Nunu Shingila, who's was just recently the head of Meta for Africa. She's extraordinary. And I gave a speech about 3 or 4 years ago, and I said, Nunu taught me dignity and grace. Now, this is a woman that came up through apartheid, chaired Ogilvy South Africa, battled cancer, had her husband nurse her back to health, only to have him die from cancer. I mean, she grew up during apartheid as a CEO. Let's just think about the challenges that she had. All of a sudden, the challenges that I had seemed rather small.
Yeah.
And you learn how to put things in perspective. And I'm sure it didn't feel like that at the time, but certainly as I reflect on my career almost 10 years later after I left the country, I'm far more mature, far more pragmatic, and far more optimistic about the human race as a result of my work around the world.
How about the work itself? Did you enjoy trying to appeal to the African sensibilities in terms of brands? Because I'm sure they're a lot different. They see the world differently than we do. Was that a fun part of the job?
The first thing I think you realize is that Nigeria is different than South Africa, is different than Kenya, different than Zambia or Tanzania or Egypt or Sudan or Mauritius or Mozambique. I mean, go Angola. I mean, just pick a country. They're all very different. So to have different teams, different countries, means you had to be mindful of the cultural mores. How you market to people in Ethiopia was different than how you might market to people in Tanzania, which is certainly different from how you meet people in South Africa. And within South Africa, how you market to people in Johannesburg is slightly different from what you do in Cape Town versus Durban. All these things I learned. And you just learn also that there are certain cultural cues that people come over and they're like, well, I'm a woman, so you should let me do this. Hold on. I'm a proud woman. I get it. I'm a proud Black woman. But you got to defer to the cultural cues in the country that you're a part of. You can't, as someone told me, you can't come in guns a-blazing with your Western philosophies, tell them this is how the meeting's going to roll. And you're like, they'll shut you down quickly. So I learned to listen first and act second.
You can't come in with your cowboy hat on and tell them this is the way the Americans.
Here's the thing. People, they see you as American, not just Black, but American. So don't think because I was Black that there was some kind of pass. No, they wanted to see that I can perform. Once they saw I can perform, then the respect came.
Did you enjoy the interchange in cultural between the Caribbean and Africa, like
Very
Cuban
similar.
music, Jamaican reggae music? There's such an interchange from Africa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When my mom came to Nairobi to visit me, she said, "Oh, this is just like Jamaica." I said, "Yeah, Mom, a lot like Jamaica." So I am grateful that growing up first generation, having a mom from Jamaica, my father from Haiti prepared me well, because I kind of knew inherently how to act, the things to do, things, you got to defer to the elders. You had to dress really conservatively. I mean, I remember saying to a young lady, we were working in West Africa, which is in Gabon, actually. And I said to this woman, do not go to the president's palace with a dress on above your knee. She didn't listen to me. She was tossed out of that room so quickly. And I said to her, she's like, I'm appalled. I said, didn't I tell you that you must respect the country you're a part of? And you can dress like that in Paris, but by no means you're going to dress like that in this country with the conservative laws that they have. So you have to just be respectful for the country that you're kind of working in and what their laws are.
Does a business week have the same tempo as it has in America? Is it like, the Monday through Friday grind and weekends you get to spend some time? Is it the same type of
Better
tempo or is it
quality of
different?
life, better quality of life. I would argue the quality of life in Kenya, across the continent, and in Europe is very similar. They take their holidays seriously. They take their family time seriously. As Americans, we really never turned it off. But in Europe and in Africa, they do. Holiday is like a month. Holiday in August and a holiday in December. They shut down. And they run the rest of the months, but they really do treasure family time. And I have a special bond with my friends in London, and I have a special bond with my friends in Kenya and in Ghana and across the continent as well.
Well, I've never been to London before, but I've seen Love Actually a few times. And
Julian, you've not been to London?
No, I never have. I mean,
telling me?
I've stopped by on the way to Amsterdam and other places, but I never have. And I've always wanted to.
Julian, first of all, Christmas in London is magical.
That's what I hear.
It's like something out of a Charles Dickens novel. And you got to bring your kids. As a matter of fact, my kids were like, as much as Christmas in New York is cool, there's nothing like Christmas in London. There's nothing like Boxing Day. There's nothing like, it never gets too cold. It doesn't get too warm. It's sweater weather.
Yeah.
It's like just enough where you can sit and have a gin and tonic, or you can sit at a pub and have some hot chocolate. It's just, London is a very special place for me, and it holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah. Was it more like America to you, operating as African-American CEO, executive, or was it different even than Africa and America?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think London, they have classism, which is deep, right? And I think what I learned in London is, again, you pay attention to cultural mores, because again, you're Black, one thing, but you're American. Truth is, but they don't want to tell you they don't like Americans as much. And I found myself listening to calls saying, gosh, did I ever sound like that loud? And that like, that nasally voice? But the Americans, things changed. But then Brexit happens, and then it's all bets are off. So go figure. The Brits have to figure it out as well.
Yeah. Well, at one point, I was president of a company that was owned by a Dutch conglomerate, and
Dutch is very different. They are very different and very rigid.
very rigid. Well, I remember I'd go over there and I talk to people, and you know how you have those prospectus every year to come out and what the company's doing. There wouldn't even be a Black face anywhere. They wouldn't even pretend that they were diverse. In America, even if there's no opportunity in a company for African Americans or other people of color, at least on the outwardly, they would act like there was. But in Holland, they didn't even pretend. That was really surprising.
Anywhere. They don't pretend in Holland. They don't pretend in Germany. I mean, the UK is just starting to get better, but yeah, it's very different, and it's starting to change. And oddly enough, if you travel through Amsterdam, it's probably one of the most diverse cities. When you really kind of get out and move around on your bicycle, one of the most diverse cities and beautiful cities. But, they've got work to do. They all have work to do. They really do. But for me, I was blessed to have just an incredible bosses and colleagues that really were very kind when I was there. And my old boss in Europe used to have these senior leadership meetings, and I think you'll appreciate it. And every year they were in a different part of Europe or the Middle East or Africa. And I asked him one day, why did you do it? He said, because you never know how people grow up. And so on every retreat, we do them twice a year, and you talk about the numbers, he'd save a bit for a cultural excursion. Maybe one time you're skiing, maybe another thing it's about wine, another time it's about art. And he just wanted to make sure that he leveled the playing field. When you were networking with other clients, he would ask you about art, if you ski, if you know about wine. Because at this level, at the CEO level and the MD level, the networking is very different. Yeah. And you have to be well-versed in many things and many topics. Yeah. And he was really big on that.
Well, it seems clear that your time in Africa made you a better executive, made you a better professional. Would you say the same thing about your time in the UK?
Oh, yeah. Both. I consider them as one long assignment, 7 years.
Yeah.
I think I'm a better CEO now than I was going to Africa as a CEO. Much more pragmatic, much more knowledgeable. I'm less fearful. I don't fear the unknown anymore. You can figure it out. Hell, after taking a company through bankruptcy, you can figure it out. And that's what happened to Vice. They went through a massive restructuring. Talk about a lesson. You want to know a lesson? Take a company through restructuring. You'll learn what that lesson is. And in the end, you realize you can't control all outcomes, but you can control how you treat people. And so I think if you err on the side of treating people with dignity and humility, you can accomplish anything.
Well, on your LinkedIn page, you said that all media is digital now, and it's obviously so. I mean, you can't really separate
You can't separate the two. You cannot separate. If you talk to your children, ask them if they even watch cable.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So when my son went to UVA, his roommate pointed the TV in his own direction, as in like making a statement. I'm like, well, my son's never watched TV in his life. He'll just look at his phone and watch whatever he wants.
Now they're doing YouTube TV, or quite frankly, they're casting from their phone. I mean, as it is, I have, because, old school, I have cable, I have all the channels. But the truth is, most of the time, I'm watching either Prime, Netflix, or reruns of Stanley Tucci Discovering Italy, because I love to cook, and in another life, I want to be him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but when you go back to the days when you got started in this industry, when it was print, you were selling ads. It was a whole different time.
And I started out doing digital. But let me tell you what's funny about me. I was, after NYU, I ended up doing consulting at Price Waterhouse. And after that, I got recruited at IBM doing marketing strategy, helping them figure out how to go direct using something called the internet, because there was this fella called Michael Dell of Dell Computers, and he was only selling stuff online. And at the time I started at IBM, Apple was in the toilet. People questioned whether or not Apple was going to survive. That's how far along it was. But after spending, 3+ years there, I realized I was bored, and they weren't going to embrace the digital revolution the way I thought they needed to. But then that's when I got the opportunity to go to Digitas. It was called a different company at that point. But I got in on the ground floor, Julian. When I was telling you I was coding, I was literally flying by the seat of my pants. But it was exciting because we're doing new media, new work. And I could not be happier to do that work. And so I kind of became known for doing a lot of innovative work and taking a lot of chances. And that's when I worked with the likes of American Express and with AT&T and many, many others. So I kind of became known as not just a transformation person, but someone who's grounded in innovation. And that really launched my career.
Yeah. Well, not to sound old fashioned, but is there anything about those days that was better back in those days? Is the way they did business? I mean, those days are gone and they're not coming back, but did they have a point?
I think because we were all figuring it out, we gave each other there was a lot of humility. You know what I mean? I think people can be arrogant now, like, I've got to figure it out. I'm the smartest one in the room. People talk about AI changing the future. I have no doubt that artificial intelligence has changed the way we interact and engage, but I'll be the first to tell you, be careful about putting all your eggs in the AI basket, because too much technology actually can backfire. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, can take the place of human interaction. If you see what that means, take a look at our kids today and how spending too much time on the phone has done to them. Too little human interaction actually, I think, impacts the brain development over time. So there's got to be a balance.
Yeah. Well, Nadja, I had a friend, Peter Coleman. He's like this guy puts deals together for companies, and I was up there having dinner with him, and I asked him when he was going to retire, and he was about my age then. So I'm 57, so he was probably about that at the time, and that was the most offensive question he's ever had. And I got, this is a Manhattan thing. People, they don't think that way up there. And thinking about you, and I have many more years to work. I enjoy it, but thinking about you taking on a new challenge when you go on Facebook, you look around, some of our friends are retiring. And how do you feel about taking on a new challenge in this time of your life?
I wish But no, it's just not even me.
Yeah.
I was talking to, I don't know if you know, Yvette Sadler
Of
and
course. Yeah.
Sharon Ann Miller. So I was having dinner with them the other night. And, we got long years ahead of us, right? I mean, I am so grateful for my time at UVA because I have so many close friends. Richie and Yvette and Sharon and Chan and so many others, Monica and Charlene. They're people I talk to on a regular basis. Richie and I are together all the time. Like our family's together all the time. And I don't know, there's something special about the UVA population. Like even if we don't speak all the time, Harold just hit me up. I need to speak with one of his kids about what they want to do. We are very fortunate, Jillian, to be part of an alumni group that really takes care of each other. Like we cannot talk for 20 years, but if we knew you during that time, we're like, hold on for a second. I'm gonna help you out. What do you need? Like there's something special. You talked about that time. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have a lot, but we did try to take care of each other when we could. And whether you hung out a lot or a little, that's who we are as people. I think that's what's very special about the UVA community.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to my son, we didn't have phones. So if we wanted to go see someone, we had to go over there and knock on their door and hope they were home.
Right, or leave them a note like, yo, you there? What's up? Are you good? And folks are like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, all right, well, you didn't answer the door. What's up? You didn't return the call back. Back then, you used to put stickies up to call people back.
That's
Remember?
right. Yeah.
Little sticky notes.
Hope to see you at the party.
Come see you at the party.
Well, you were talking about UVA people that you bumped into, and while you said that, I was just thinking about the UVA people that I know in your industry and that have done really well. Chris Foster, Lauren Patani. I don't know if you know Ken Barbieri. He was a little younger than us, but there are a lot of folks.
Chris Foster. Oh, Chris and I talked about that. He went to UVA, didn't he?
Yeah, he was younger than us, but
he was younger than us.
Yeah,
I'm such an 80s snob. I'm like, when were you there? Oh, okay. Late 90s.
Chris is probably there about class of 93 or 92, around there, I guess.
Yeah. No, look, I think we've all done really well. Kara Robinson and I are still really close. And, I'm so proud of all the work she's done at Unilever. Erin Robinson is much younger than us, and she's also at Unilever, but she's probably 10 years after me. We take care of each other. Yvette Sadler, is godmother, my children. I mean, we all are very close. A bunch of us traveled to Tanzania for my birthday, which was really, really very nice. I am blessed to be part of an amazing community. I always say I don't make any major decisions without talking to Yvette. I think since I was 17, I don't make any decisions without talking to Yvette. She knows all my moves ahead of time, and I love her for that.
She was AKA and you were Delta, right?
I'm a Delta. She's Delta.
She's Delta. Ooh, I got to edit that. I'm going to edit that out for Yvette gets.
That's okay. I'll let Yvette deal with you on that one. I'm like, what? No, it's fine. We have love for everybody. And, I think of people that inspire me like Yvette and Sharon and like Glenn Key and Donna. You got to think of these women that were kind of trailblazers in their own right. I mean, Glennie, I remember, God rest her soul. It was a Black alumni reunion weekend, and I had just been selected to be CEO of Africa, and I was sitting in a car with Glennie. And I was like, I don't know. Should I do it? I don't know, girl. I think that it's a lot. Glennie's like, girl, if you don't go do this, you're going to regret it. But the thing about your UVA peeps is they're always going to support you. I mean, yes, I'm a Delta and I love my sorors, but folks across UVA just support you. That's just no matter what you pledged or who you were, that's just how we rolled. And I think that, I don't know about the other generations, but certainly when you and I were there, Julian, we all support each other. And I don't know if that's because that's how we were raised or that's what we knew, but we didn't know any better. We were like, well, let's just hunker down because we don't know what's ahead around the corner.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, since we're talking about Glenn Key, I mean, she's so amazing. I remember when I got into sales in the legal industry, she's someone that was a very important force for me. But Glenn was one of the most authentic people that I ever met. I met her when I came to UVA. She was one of these people that it was Ricky Keller. There was Glenn. There were certain people that everyone was, they're everything. And there's athletes as well. But Glenn was always Glenn. It's very rare that you can see someone be herself or themselves at all time. And she pulls it off so brilliantly. And maybe that's why she was so successful, because she always knew who she was.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, people asked me, why I pledged. I mean, look at Glennie, look at Mary, look at Yvette, look at Sharon, Chan, there's so many others, Wendy, Hill. There's so many women that inspired me, because I saw myself in them, right? And I think what's kind of incredible about that experience is they emulated the kind of Black women you wanted to be. Women you wanted to be, period. And Glennie certainly, didn't matter. White, everybody wanted to be Glenn, right? Because they were like, she was kind of it. And so how are you not inspired by that? When, I was broken when I found out that she had passed, but she would have wanted me to keep on going. That's just the kind of person that Glennie was. And she left behind this amazing legacy of be good to each other and support each other. And that's how she was. And that's how we treat each other. So I think that's part of why UVA is so special, and certainly the Delta community at UVA is special, but with that, the broader Black community at UVA is so special. We just support each other no matter what.
Yeah. Well, talking about the UVA days, I remember you always seemed like you had all the answers, always fashionable, always looked great. And you were very confident beyond your years. But I'm sure it must have been a huge adjustment for you to go from Queens
Woo!
to Charlottesville, because I know it was an adjustment for me to come from Fairfax to Charlottesville. So
It was awful. I was in boarding school first in New Hampshire.
is that right?
And fun fact, I didn't really date till I got to UVA, because I was one of 5 Black kids in a school. And I was almost too Black for the white kids, too white for the Black kids, Caribbean, the whole thing. I was definitely didn't know where I fit, but I quickly got to UVA and found my community of people quite easily. And UVA is special. It's kind of like Richie and I talk about part of how he and I became friends, because we used to look at these folks like, dang, these folks are rich. How the heck they pull that? And we were so in awe of people, but everyone was just really supportive of, I think Lawana Dean was assigned to me my first year to be an advisor, and everybody, it was just, I think Lauren Wilder, everybody was so incredibly kind. BB is my big brother. He was always there for me. I think of so many people who were just let me help you, let me help you. And even professors. I used to babysit for Professor Faton, who quite as a kept was one of the chair of the Foreign Affairs Department. And it was Haitian. And he knew I was Haitian. And he was like, well, you know what? You're going to babysit my kids. And I used to earn extra money so he and his wife can go out by babysitting his kids sometimes on a Thursday or Friday night. UVA is special. It will always be special to me. I'm not saying UVA was perfect, but it was special for me.
Yeah, it was a big adjustment for me to come from a suburb area, and then it was a pretty progressive area in Northern Virginia. We thought it was, and then you go to Charlottesville, and at the time it was completely segregated socially. I mean, I ended up having some white friends, but not at first. It was almost like a little Black school within UVA. And
definitely was a little Black school, but you know what? The truth is, there's a woman named, God, I don't even know if she's alive, but if she is, thank you, Marilyn DeBerry. There's this woman named Marilyn DeBerry in financial aid. We'll talk about Mike Mallory next, but Marilyn DeBerry was in charge of financial aid. And I remember my mom and I showing up in Queens. My mother was a single mom. And she was like, look, this tuition has a gap. And I don't know how we're going to close this gap. And I remember Marilyn DeBerry saying to me, don't you worry, we got her. And it's not just me. There are countless young folk at UVA who Marilyn DeBerry, I don't know what was in her file cabinet. I don't know how she came up with the most unusual work studies, but she was like, we're going to put it together so you all can stay. And I was speaking to somebody at a reunion weekend. They were like, oh yeah, damn Skippy, none of us would be here without that woman. She single-handedly took care of so many of us. She was incredible.
That's one thing I forgot about too. You mentioned it was the wealth gap. And I didn't, at UVA in the Black community, we didn't show off our money. But there were some folks who are very successful.
Isn't that crazy? There are people who had more than us, It's funny because I think kids today show it off more, but back then we all were of the same. We all wrote a check for 50 cents, sometimes like $1.25.
We all show up at the treehouse. We all show up at Bonnie
Some
Cat's.
of the treehouse are like, you
You,
don't have any more punches? Can I
yeah.
borrow a punch from you? Hey, but there was a kind of, we all had that common approach to things. And it's kind of lovely that that was our experience. I don't know, UVA is such a special place. And despite all that's happened in the latter years in Charlottesville, it's still a very special place to me.
Yeah. And, you know, and to me as well, even people that had money, like Mike Russell, very successful family, and Mike has carried on that
But
legacy.
he never talked, like I didn't even know what Mike Russell's family did till after he
No,
left. Like, get out of here. Is that
no.
what Mike did? I mean, we never talked about it.
We didn't talk about it. It was not, that wasn't the culture, you know, but I felt by the time I graduated from law school in 91, it was changing. And I think some of that was a different world, the television show.
Yeah.
I felt it was changing while we were in school. I felt like by those 7 years, it did change.
I would argue probably so. I mean, for us, we were just all we hung out in one big group. Like, I don't know, like people had people they hung out with, but we hung out with everybody. Everyone hung out with everybody, which is kind of crazy. But we also really took care of each other. I mean, we were all activists. You got to think, Julian, we were born at a very unusual time where we caught the tail end of the civil rights era as young people. We also saw some of the privilege that came through, other appropriate legislation, right? Diversity programs. When we also see the effects of it all being taken away. This is one generation where we've seen it all. So we don't take anything for granted. You know what I mean? We're like, okay, you're going to take it away from me? Okay, well, I didn't have it for this period of time. Or you're going to be an asshole. Okay, why? I know you judge people based on their character, not the color of their skin. And I think our generation is rather unique in that we've experienced it all. Busing, non-busing, assholes, racists, people, all of it. And we're still okay. We also don't take ourselves that seriously.
No, exactly. Well, look, Nadja, this has been great. I took more time than you promised to, but I did want to end with this. How would you characterize yourself as a parent? You're a high achieving professional, but you know, as a mom, sometimes parents are different. How have you approached parenting, and what do you see in your kids' future?
Oh, it's funny. They're in the other room watching movies. I'm definitely tough, right? I have high expectations, and I've had to teach myself that they're not me. Their path is their own path. So I'm tough, but I like to believe that I'm kind and considerate as well.
You are.
And, they know I'm about business, but they know I'm about all that love too. So I'm a delicate balance of love and tough love all at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Julian, I love the fact that you're doing this. This is great.
Oh, well, you're in great company, Nadja. And I've been lucky enough to talk to some wonderful athletes, and I've just started kind of doing business leaders and lawyers the last year, just to kind of change it up, because a lot of times when you talk to athletes, they've been interviewed. I did Wally Walker, a famous player. He's been interviewed dozens and dozens of times, but a lot of our corporate executives like yourself, they've been interviewed a lot, but not necessarily about their background, about what their UVA days. What about UVA made them special? So I've actually really enjoyed it, and it's a great way for me, to keep my network going as well.
Well, you should definitely put Yvette and Sharon on your list. Those two are just like, they're incredible. I mean, Yvette has a whole private wealth management business. She's all about, returning wealth back to the Black community and building generational wealth. You should talk to her about that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, maybe she can return some of that wealth to me.
She can. You should. I'll tell her. She's coming your way. I'll send her your way.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'll make sure I'll tag her on this. But look, again, this is great. Now, sometime when I'm in New York or when you're in DC, we got to get together.
We absolutely do, Julie. You look exactly the same.
Well, so do you. You look
like
younger
Benjamin Button. That's because Caribbean people, we don't age.
I know you look like you're.
Brian Brown and I had this conversation. Like, Caribbean people don't. We age backwards.
I know. Oh, I'm beat up though. Lost all my hair. Got a bunch of wrinkles, Nadja. But I don't have any
wrinkles. You look like you live in that soft life.
Yeah. Life's been pretty good. I enjoy myself. So, but
Well, get out of the country, Julian. Go
I
to
will.
Croatia.
Yeah, I would love to go to
Take your
London.
wife, go to Croatia. I'm telling you, lots of places for you to see.
I've
Get
never
out.
been to Africa.
Okay, you got to go to Ghana. You got to go to
Yeah,
Zanzibar. You got to go. Just go.
yeah.
Get up
Just
and go.
one quick story. So when my father was in Alzheimer's care,
Yeah.
um, a lot of West Africans do that type of work because
Yeah.
they're very patient people, and you
Yeah.
have to be incredibly patient. And they also, it's a culture that worships the elderly, so it's a great sector for West Africans. And when my dad was in his last days, all those guys around him were Ghanaian, and my father was a minister, and they just worshipped my father. And I always had a connection to Ghana after that. And I always cheer for them in the World Cup. And
It's my favorite country. If you go to Ghana, you will fall in love. Some of the kindest, smartest, lovely, most beautiful place in the world. It was
wow,
one of my favorite countries to visit when I lived there.
yeah,
I still have great ties with people in Accra and across Ghana. I absolutely love it. Lagos is kind of a bit like, oh my God. Ghana is a bit more like, this is chill. Do it. Just
yeah.
book a trip and go.
I,
There's no time like the present.
yeah, I better do it now. Yeah, I still have two kids in college and one in high school, so I have a lot of work to do.
Well,
But
what's wrong?
one,
You keep going back to the well. What's wrong with you? No, so one's graduating. My son's graduating from Howard in May, and
he looks just like you, by the way, your son.
it looks just like my ex-husband, which is crazy. But I'm glad you say he looks like me. And my daughter's in LA at Loyola Marymount.
Well, that's awesome.
There's a nice UVA population out in California now.
Yeah, and I know you love visiting her out in California.
I absolutely do. No, there's a good UVA population. There's Edgar Davis is out there, and Yvette's out there, and it's a whole posse of people. So it's good.
Yeah, you mentioned Edgar Davis during the lockdown. They wanted me to do the slideshow for Malcolm Pittman,
Yeah.
his funeral. So Edgar had contacted me. I hadn't talked to Edgar since college.
He is so sweet. That is he is a special human. He's a very special person.
And when you first meet him, he looks like this huge, massive football player. He's very intimidating. And then when you meet him,
you're like, oh, Edgar. No, he's so sweet. That's my Edgar. He is a sweetheart. And I told him I was doing this. He says, tell Julian I said hi. I said, okay.
Yeah. Well, look, well, definitely so. Edgar's great. And look, Nadja, I mean, you've done amazing. No one's surprised, but very, very proud to have been your friend and seen your success. So
it sounded like Brian Brown. He almost had a little tear in his eye when he saw me at Eric Clay's wedding. And it's so funny. He was like, look at you. I was like, take me a minute, but I figured it out.
yeah. Oh no, you've done great. So it's really nice. The best thing about social media, other than your business, is that it enables you to follow your friends from afar. Like I've followed your career, for years. I know you've been very successful.
But I think what's great about us is that it allows us just to keep in touch, just enough. And during the pandemic, I think it kind of connected people and it kept everyone together.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I mean, the pandemic was a very painful time, but it was a great time to be in contact with people. And we did so many like Zooms, Friday night Zooms with different groups of people that I knew from high school, college, and so I probably had never been in touch with more people than during the.
And I did it in London, and I had a whole global Zoom call. I had Richie on there, and he was like in DC, and I'm in London. I'm connecting him to my London peeps. But it was our way of just connecting everyone to everything. So it was really kind of lovely.
It's so funny because I bump into Richie everywhere. I was having lunch somewhere downtown. I sat down next to a guy, Richie. I go to a basketball game, Richie. I mean, Richie is like he's the mayor of this town.
He is the mayor of the town, and that is my boy. And I was with Richie over Thanksgiving. Like I'm with him all the time.
You got to tell him I said hi. All right, I need to reach out to Richie also.
Reach out to Richie. Reach out to Edgar. Yeah, they're all very sweet. But we'll be there for Black Alumni Reunion weekend.
It'll be here before you know it.
My birthday weekend, so I think I'm going to have a party.
Okay, awesome.
You heard it here first.
Hopefully, you invite me. You never invited me to your parties in college. So.
First of all, you'll be we'll be at the DJ booth. I actually need to get a little DJ and get it going on. It's gonna be an old school party. Your son won't want to be at the party, but we actually have a really good time. Our hair will be in a ponytail. We'll be dancing.
My son just studies. He doesn't go out and he is connected. He goes to the step shows and he tries to do some things, but he doesn't really party at all. He's a good kid.
He needs to just watch us party that weekend. Like,
I
how
know.
are the leaders of the free world partying like this? You're like, how do you think we lead? This is what we do.
Yeah. I keep telling them this is a very special time. These moments don't come again. So you got to enjoy your
time.
college.
Enjoy your time for sure. No,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for this, Julian. Thank you so much. I
Yeah, not
appreciate
just great. Let's be in touch.
Absolutely, sweetie. Take care.
Oh, you too.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.